Welcome, reanimated fans, to this week's episode. I am H.A. Conrad, here as always with my intrepid co-host, Stuart Tiffin. Hello, Stuart.
Morning.
Good morning. And sorry for the delay. We had some technical difficulties. I've been having some internet issues, but hopefully that is now resolved for the moment anyway.
Seems to me, if can I interject about the internet for a moment?
Sure.
It seems to me that cities that go back like 200, 300 years, like Chicago and New York, two cities with which I am mildly familiar, they have infrastructure problems when it comes to the internets. Is that
Um,
a gross oversimplification?
Well, it may be. I kind of suspect that perhaps some individuals, not us, have been monkeying around with stuff based upon the number of wires and things that are like coming out of the box that I can see down at the bottom of the building. So I have a
Uh-oh.
feeling that there may be other issues at hand, but we
Is it
will
F
not know.
Society?
We will not. We will not know until we have the wonderful person come and look at it, which they are finally going to do. So we'll see. I feel like it's actually gotten a lot better now. There's Wi-Fi sort of capability that like in the subway now, which was not the case before. So I think it's gotten better, but yeah, there's still spots where it's not necessarily the best coverage because there's just so many people using it. So. But all that aside, glad to be back, and we will be doing our delayed review of Life After Beth, and this is a film that we had talked about quite a bit ahead of it coming out, then never actually reviewed it. But this is the film with Aubrey Plaza and Dane DeHaan, and it was written by what is his name, Jeff Baena,
Mm-hmm.
written and directed by him. And he is I don't know if you ever saw this, Stuart, but he co-wrote I Heart Huckabees,
I did not know that.
right? So I'll admit to you, going into this, I had some high hopes for this film. But I will reserve my judgment and comments until we get to it.
Mm-hmm.
Before we get into our review, we have a couple of little news tidbits. Do you wanna kick it off?
Oh boy. Okay. Yes. Number one on the news tidbits is an article. There's been a couple articles recently about iZombie. I think they're making a bit of a media push.
Mm.
But the one that I picked up from Screen Rant talks about how they are looking at becoming more of a zombie show and less of a crime procedural.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I kind of stuck with it into the second season. I'm behind on it. And it definitely had and keep in mind I am a huge Buffy fan, but it had a little flavor of the monster of the week kind of thing with the crime of the week, whatever it was. So I'm curious to see what new direction this takes. So I think it's still a cute show, but it's definitely, to me, it's like a bubblegum zombie show, if you will.
Yeah.
Not It's not really serious. It's definitely not a Walking Dead, and they even deliberately point that out in this article. But
No. But
but I
they're at least they're at least playing up zombies more. And I can't really speak to the show at all because I haven't seen it since episode two. Whenever we stopped reviewing it, I kind of stopped watching it. Even though I said I was going to keep watching it, I haven't. There it
yeah,
is. I laid it out. My cards are on the table.
I still like the cast. I think that they're a good cast, but it is definitely, it's on the lighter side of the zombie fare in my opinion. Ha ha ha. So yeah, so there's that, and then there was an April Fool's joke that you got taken in by, but
I did.
has enough reality to it and enough. I can see why you were, but this was on Bloody Disgusting, and it was basically about George Romero concluding his entire zombie series called Extinction of the Dead, and gave a somewhat plausible plot for the ending of his series,
It's pretty
which
damn believable because they channeled his curmudgeonly, like nobody else does zombies right sort of mentality,
right.
especially with the way he feels about The Walking Dead. So I totally bought it.
Yeah, it's very, very clever. And then in not April Fool's joke territory, I actually did, when this came out, I was like, oh, is this really true? But not really all that surprising. But There was basically some pit of bones that they found near an abandoned town, and the town was called Wareham Percy. And basically, by looking at these bones, and this is from medieval times, and this is in England, they have found that the bodies of the dead weren't just buried; they were basically hacked apart and burned, and
including little children.
yeah, basically just to avoid them coming back as revenants, and it's pretty rough if you look at some of the things that they did, and they basically found at least 10 different bodies, but they were not not really. They were not all together. Let's just say they were quite dismembered. Some people thought that there may have been cannibalism involved, but most people think that this is perhaps a way to like keep the evil spirits from coming back. So, just have to say, glad I don't live in medieval times. How about you?
Well, we'll get a better look at medieval zombie times when that Korean show comes out,
Yeah,
Kingdom,
yeah, exactly.
later this year. But yeah, I thought that it was interesting that this comes up when we were just talking about how like, well, you never hear about medieval zombies.
I know, right? I
And
kind of feel like this may have been a deliberate placement just because of that. They heard us. They felt like they had to fill in this information gap that we had. So are you ready to hop into this review?
let's do it.
All right. So, Life After Beth. Now, this came out in 2014. Definitely a very limited release. It was only in the theaters here and a couple of the theaters, very, very briefly. And then went right into being downloaded, and we just never got around to it. And this stars Aubrey Plaza and Dane DeHaan and John C. Riley and Molly Shannon. Those are the sort of main players, though a couple of cameos by a few people that I think everybody knows: Paul Reiser, Matthew Gray Gubler. Is it Gubler or Gubler?
I have no idea. And I
So
would agree in theory that Paul Reiser was a cameo because he only has like 3 lines. But I
right,
also think that he nails every one of his lines to
he
the.
does.
And I'm like, oh, Mad About Me or Mad About You or whatever the name of this hit sitcom that lasted like 6 years
Yep.
is the last time I think he's done anything that I haven't seen. And I miss the man. I think he's really good.
He's really great. I wish he would come back. The last thing I kind of heard about him was when there was that massive Sony hack, and they came across some emails where he was basically making a play to have Mad About You be on Netflix and the licensing and all of that, and apparently was not making a lot of headway with that.
It's a shame. It was a pretty funny show. I don't know
It
if that had
was.
aged very well. I haven't seen it since the 90s, but it was a pretty funny show.
Yeah, no, agreed. Also in this was a little bit of a cameo by Gary Marshall, who I'm sad he is gone, but it was kind of funny that he was in here as the grandpa.
And Peggy
And
Miley, the woman who played Grandma, super recognizable. Her face is recognizable anyway.
Peggy Miley.
Yeah, she's the tiny little lady with the very funny face.
Oh,
She's got a
okay.
funny face.
And then also another a cameo, sort of as the newer love interest, Anna Kendrick, and it's kind of funny because
Yeah.
she and Aubrey Plaza were in that like kind of weird, like it wasn't was it a National Lampoon's? Mike and Dave Need Wedding Dates.
Oh yeah, I've only seen the cover art. Haven't seen the movie. Was it pretty good?
It's super silly, but they both do a good job. It seems like they have a pretty good time, and that was after this, but I suspect there may have been some overlap or, something like that. So that was kind of funny.
Well, they do
Um,
a good job with Anna Kendrick in this, and maybe I'm already diving too deep into it, but it seems like this is an early one of her works. So like,
yeah,
because
yeah.
that's kind of what she's playing. She's playing this like innocent
She always
kind of
plays that character, though.
not in her a cappella movies.
Yeah, I guess.
She's like a bitter, great singing college girl,
Yeah,
whatever combination that is. But I thought she was pretty good in this too. And like when she showed up, I was like, oh, that's right, she's in this because she doesn't
yeah,
show up until like halfway through. But
yeah.
I enjoyed that. And then there was who else? Oh yeah, Jim O'Heir from Parks and Rec,
Ah,
the guy
yeah.
who plays Jerry or Gary, depending on which season you're in. He shows up for a cameo, and he's pretty good too.
Yeah, no, he's fantastic. And obviously, Aubrey Plaza is in Parks and Rec. And she's one of my favorite characters in that show. So,
Yes, yes. Anyway, the
um,
cast I think was pretty awesome. I can't think of anything in the cast as far as casting goes that I didn't really enjoy. Hey, but here's a secret for you, HA. I really like this movie. I don't think you did by the sounds of your first introduction, but I
no,
was
okay, so here's the thing with the person who wrote this. I guess I was expecting a little bit more. I did like it a lot, but with the cast, to me, it fell a little bit flat just in terms of the storyline. But overall, I did enjoy it. So
okay.
there's no, I don't think that, in the sort of echelon of movies, is it, in my top 10? No, but I did find it very entertaining. And there's an aspect of it that I find hilariously entertaining, but just for personal reasons.
For personal
So,
reasons.
yes. So we'll get to that. But
Okay.
so the setup of this film, the interesting choice that they made is you don't really get the backstory behind the name character Beth, who's played by Aubrey Plaza. You just kind of see a little tidbit of her walking in the woods. You don't see a death scene. It just immediately flashes to a funeral or an after funeral sort of gathering.
It's the Shiva, the sitting Shiva thing.
Right,
Not
right.
Shiva, sorry, that's different. But sitting Shiva.
Shiva. Shiva is a goddess.
Something else, yes.
But anyway, Dane DeHaan plays Zach, who is the deceased Beth's boyfriend ish. I guess they were having some issues before she died, taking a break, if you will. And it just really leaps into the mourning period. And I did kind of like that they didn't go too crazy with this because the audience is left trying to piece together what might have happened, and it makes it a little bit more interesting because you don't necessarily fully understand where they were in their relationship. You just have to glean that from what Zach is saying and experiencing,
Yeah.
and so that was kind of interesting.
And it
Just
comes together gradually. And it's a nice sort of this sort of event in a relationship. It acts like a hard reset. And so that's a perfect time for an audience to kind of start figuring out all the what everything is and what it means. Otherwise, you would see too much of a change between the way he was interacting with her before she died versus afterwards.
right.
So
And it
I like.
also explores that it's a trope, but it is an interesting trope that when somebody dies and you're going through a mourning period and you really want to see them back, well, you're going through that mourning period, and then when they're back, or if they are back, I guess the only people that actually go through this are people that have, you know, either been lost at sea or faked their death and then come back. But the Castaway is sort of a movie that leaps to mind in terms of that kind of theme.
Mm,
But it's this weird thing. So you definitely the thing that you want the most in the world is to see that person again,
yeah.
but if it actually happens, it's kind of screwed up because your brain has moved on to some extent. Even if it doesn't want to. So that's kind of an interesting idea, I think, anyway. In this, I feel like they kept the mystery going because he bonds with her parents. He's just mourning the loss of her, and it is revealed that part of the reason why he is grieving so much is that he left things somewhat unresolved with her, and you don't know exactly why things weren't going so well with them, but that they were taking a break. She was off hiking by herself, and he feels very guilty about how they left it. And
Yeah.
I loved the scene between him and Maury, who's played by her dad, who's played by John C. Riley.
Oh yeah, amazing scenes, all of them with John C. Riley and Dan. What Dane? Is
I
his
think
name?
it's Dane. Yep, Dane DeHaan.
Yeah. Yeah, like just getting high, smoking weed, and but like, don't call me Mr. Slocum, call me Maury, and all this getting to know you, and then even just few little scenes with Molly Shannon, who I felt like was kind of underused in this film,
Yeah,
except for maybe one scene. Um,
I think I know the scene you're talking about.
yeah, but for like, let's talk about a great male bonding sort of, grief and coping, and to tie that in with how he's doing with his own family and and his brother, who's like an amazing character. Also, the guy playing his brother does a really good job.
Do you
It
do you
makes for a
watch
really interesting dynamic.
Do you watch Criminal Minds at all?
No.
Because Matthew Gray Gubler is from that, and he is
Okay.
really really good. And so I was very happy to see him in this because I think he's an actor that gets underutilized, and so it just made me. I was thrilled to see him in this, and he did an amazing job. So, um, but yeah, no, there's the contrast between how the main character Zach is interacting with his family. There's definitely that feeling that nobody understands what he's going through except for Beth's parents. And so he keeps kind of going over there for solace. And initially, this seems to be working out, but then they kind of like block him out.
Really only works that first night, and then after
Yeah.
that, they don't answer the door. He's like, "Oh, we talked about Jello. I'm going to take them Jello." And
I
he's
know.
wearing Beth's scarf everywhere. He's just like a really sad portrait of a
Yeah.
person at this point.
They definitely got, there's the scenes of him sitting by the pool, which was very obviously to me like an obvious throw, like tip of the hat to the graduate. He like they his family, like if you think about it just from a realistic point of view, all they're seeing is that he's kind of going a little crazy, but they keep saying like unhelpful things like let's take you to the neurologist or like whatever, because it's a normal thing to mourn. You're not just gonna get over that person in a day or a week or whatever. So, there's that kind of feeling that he's being, I don't know, pushed into moving on a little bit more quickly than he's willing to do.
Yeah.
So, and then I don't know, like they do a good job at playing the like not crazy card, but he thinks he sees Beth and he's freaking out, and his brother kind of comes across him and he's saying, I see Beth, I see Beth. And of course, if you were in this situation, you would think he was totally nuts.
Well, I think his brother, who works for the security company for that subdivision, I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah.
I think maybe the Slocums called him
Oh, because the brother was outside. Yeah.
because he was like banging on the door, and who knows how long he'd been doing it. And so his brother's like, "I will mace you" or whatever it is, because he's like this gung ho rent a cop, and he plays that character down to
Right.
the finest details. I love it. But yeah,
And then the part where the brothers are having the argument, and Zach says, "Well, what are you gonna do?" And he's like, "Well, I'm gonna take you to the gate and leave you there." And that's like the most he could do because he's a rent-a-cop.
or
So
he could call the police. I think he's what he was also
yeah,
suggesting.
yeah. But
But
anyway,
they have a great antagonistic relationship that yeah, the Gubler Matthew Gray Gubler, he puts it across with body language and tone of voice, and the guy playing Zach does a decent job of being like, grief stricken and overwrought. But yeah, the main antagonist here, Kyle, his brother,
yeah,
is just effortlessly. It reminds me of like a Bill Paxton in Revenge, not
totally,
Weird Science sort of Big Brother scenario.
yeah. Um, just totally unsympathetic and annoying brother.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so you have that going on, and then the reveal where finally Zach gets into the house and sees that Beth is what he thinks alive. And that's like kind of an interesting choice too. She looks normal for the most
Hmm.
part, at least in in the beginning of this film. And her parents are very adamant that she not go out at night. That
Not go out really. Period.
yeah, that nobody see her. That and also that she not be told that she's dead. She keeps, it's an interesting way to play it. Like she's somewhat normal, but she definitely does. There's something going on, obviously, because she doesn't really remember
She
that
thinks she
she's
has to test tomorrow.
yeah, there's lots of things about a test. And it's a really like just super it's funny and awkward, and they keep trying to like have their alone time, and the parents are just like, hey, why don't you just swim in our pool? And we'll just basically hang out and be around all the time, which is kind of weird. And all Zach wants to do is have sex with her, which is kind of gross.
Yep.
But
How old is Zach supposed to be? Do we have any idea?
he's
He's after
college.
college. Is he in college or after college?
I would say he's probably, it feels like after college or he quit college or something because they kind of mention it, but it doesn't feel like he's actively there necessarily.
No.
So there's that piece too, which is why I also felt like it was a little graduate-esque.
Hmm.
Somebody kind of trying to find their way and not necessarily doing it. So there was that too.
But ultimately, all of these, all these actors are obviously like in their 20s and 30s, but they're playing people, I assume, in their early 20s who are still living at home,
Right,
which is more and more normal. But still, it's a little bit of a twist, I guess, on modern storytelling.
right. Um, and the whole sort of reunion with Beth takes the like I think the inevitable turn, which is that she's just not she's kind of deteriorating, and we see this just in ways, not just with how she's looking, which does start to go downhill, like her face blisters in the sun and that kind of thing, but also in how she interacts with people. Like she gets very angry.
Hmm.
She is clearly very powerful, and the whole like beach scene was one of the funniest things I think I've ever seen. It was really it was just so well done.
He's like, "I've got a surprise for you," and she does not take it in a good way.
No,
The
his surprise was serenading her, which apparently was something that he used to do. And she does not like his music. She's very unhappy about it. And it
It's
turns
so
out
harsh.
it's so harsh, and it's like they play it really well. I honestly don't know how the actors kept straight faces while doing the scene. I think it must have been really, really hard. I suspect there are probably a lot of good outtakes from this, only because I just think it would have been almost impossible to do this straight face the first time.
Yeah.
But she reacts very badly to his serenading to the point where she's beating him up, and she starts to get. This is the point where she gets really scary, and erratic, and where there's finally this, I think. Realization that she's not the same person and that she's now scary. And there's little jokes and little comments that he makes leading up to this where he's clearly afraid of being eaten by her. He always asks her if she's like hungry.
Like
But
this was the first. I feel like the first time he found out she was back, he made a comment about like, or is she a zombie?
right.
Or yeah, and her to her parents, and they were like, oh no, no, nothing like that. Everything's cool. So yeah, it was very much a
Something in his
like
mind. He was concerned about it.
very tongue in cheek, like aware, zombie aware, which is I guess that happens in these zomcoms, but it doesn't happen really in any other parts of the genre for the most part. So
Right.
it's kind of interesting. Like Warm Bodies, which is an analog to this film, they're similar in a way.
Right.
Uh, they also are very matter of fact about zombies because it's post apocalypse in that movie. And this one, it's just like no, this is like a culturally aware
Right.
show.
Right.
Anyway, either way, I kind of enjoyed that approach. It's refreshing.
The piece that I alluded to, the personal like funny part is the whole smooth jazz thing.
Oh God, yeah.
Um, so my husband when he was younger really really liked smooth jazz, and I think he still likes it a little bit. And his mom especially likes one of the songs that was like playing, I think, in the diner scene later on. But the whole Benny Mardones, "Oh, If I Could Fly," which has a phenomenal video, and I hope you enjoyed that, Stuart, because sharing that with you is so meaningful.
That's super disturbing. A ballad about statutory rape,
Mm-hmm.
everybody's favorite. I really enjoyed the smooth jazz part too because Aubrey Plaza basically has an orgasm when it's on. It's really funny. And then later on in the movie, as things break down, you just randomly hear people blaring
Smooth
smooth
jazz,
jazz because all the zombies are into it.
right,
I
right.
thought that was fun too.
I also thought that the introduction of the other zombies, or the fact that things are not going well, and they play it pretty. It's not under the radar, but they're not in your face about it. Like people just start appearing that it's the character Zach hasn't seen in a while, or you see erratic things happening kind of in the places that he is, and
Right.
it's not fully registering with him that something, like, it's registering but not fully registering that it's connected or that
Because
something's
yeah,
not right.
He's too focused on his own problem with Beth coming back, and he's like, hey, when that one scene in the diner where the chef is clearly a zombie and
Right.
like exhibiting all the same kind of rage that Beth does,
Right.
except he's obviously just gone back to his job. And
Right.
so did the mailman. I mean, so did Jim
Yeah.
O'Hare.
Yeah.
And like he's just driving over mailboxes. But in the diner scene where Zach is like, "Have you seen weird things like people coming back?" But he's not talking about the fact that the chef is clearly being a zombie in the kitchen just then. He's talking
Right.
about his ex-girlfriend. It's kind of funny.
Right. And everybody thinks he's crazy. His family thinks he's crazy. He's been sort of set up with this childhood friend of his that his mom is really excited to set him up with. And she thinks he's crazy. And it's just not,
But Wexler doesn't think he's crazy. Anna Kendrick's character thinks that he walks on water, essentially.
she does, but he says things where her face registers like, I don't really understand what's going on.
But I like
Because,
it anyway. Like I can breathe through my nose around you and your
yeah,
skin.
yeah.
Can I touch your skin? And they haven't seen each other in years. And she's like, oh, okay, yeah, you can
Yeah.
touch my skin. I'm like, what?
She's like, you're so sweet. It's like, no, he's freaking strange. But okay.
This is a man suffering from PTSD who wants to stroke your face because he's used to having sex with a zombie.
Right.
Frankly, is what
Yeah.
it comes down to. So I really enjoyed that scene too because the jokes were it was like underhand, you know. I was just laughing along even though nobody else was laughing. It was fun.
Who did you watch this with?
Me.
Oh, okay.
I mean, the movie didn't seem it wasn't like a force down your throat kind of joke. It was
Oh,
just like,
no, no. It was
oh, this
very,
is awkward, but not in the way like you know the British Office awkward scenes.
yeah.
It wasn't awkward like that. It was awkward in a different way, and I don't know how to put it into words, but it was endearingly awkward.
No, that's true. And that, I mean, I think that that's kind of the interesting part of this film is that the Zachary character, the main character, is totally somebody that's likable, and you feel a lot of sympathy and empathy for him. You do for Beth as well, but more so for him because he's kind of going through this whole thing. Part of me, just like the way that the film was like unfolding, made me wonder if this was going to turn. I thought they were going to possibly have a twist where he was actually a zombie or where he had done something that this was like an alternate reality or something, and they didn't do that. They played it very straight, and
Hmm.
when everything finally hits the fan, and there's the whole thing where when he meets the Anna Kendrick character, it's sort of showing him that there is going to be something after Beth or something that he wants that is not that relationship. And of course, it doesn't help that she is smelly and trying now. She is showing a lot more aggression towards him.
Yeah, by this point in the movie, when he meets Anna Kendrick's character, I want to call her Beth Wexler, but her name can't be Beth. I don't know what
No,
her
it's
first
not
name is.
Beth. I don't know, but anyway.
But by that point, the Aubrey Plaza Beth character has really gone downhill and is probably like 80% unbalanced as opposed to the other way around. At first, she was very sweet, sunshine and rainbows, and now it's she's like building her weird mud room up in the attic.
I know.
And all zombies love attics. Like the weird stuff that they put in here that zombies like, smooth jazz
And
and
addicts.
attics. Like what? Okay, sure. But they're kind of like agreeable at first when they show up because later on when grandparents and former owners of the house start showing up, uh, it's it's not like immediately a threatening situation, even though it's not cool. It's weird. It's just funny. I really
Yeah,
enjoyed the
one
scene
of
where Poppy and I
yeah.
don't know what they called Grandma when they show up and he's like, I'm gonna go in the attic. Don't worry about it. I'm gonna go in the attic.
Right. And I also liked when the former owners of the house showed up and they're talking about how much they paid for it. The Paul Reiser character is like, when did you do that? Because it was something like $45,000 or
It
something.
was 28,000. Yeah, he's like
Yeah, it was
28,000. When was that? Yeah,
yeah,
his delivery on that was just perfect.
yeah.
So that was honestly that was the one line that he delivered that I was like, oh, Paul Reiser, I need you to be in everything again.
Right. No, he was fantastic. Um, it was kind of nice how this unfolds and his family finally understands that he's not crazy because definitely they have been going along thinking that he is off the deep end when he's talking about Beth. They just figure he's like mourning, and they take it to the things go downhill very, very fast. So it goes from him having those sort of weird, aggressive interactions with Beth to the diner scene where he accidentally runs over Beth, and then to zombie apocalypse pretty quickly. I feel like the timing of the pacing of this film was pretty fast. It never felt like it dragged to me.
True. Yeah, that's true.
And they get to this, to this point where there's actually death and destruction, although they tend to do it pretty well without, there's like some very random like things thrown in, which you think that there might be a solution to this, because he tries to figure out whether the housekeeper, Beth's family's housekeeper, had something to do with this, and assumes because she's Haitian, she somehow has something to do with the zombie uprising. And
I
so
love this scene. I love this
the
scene where he goes.
yes, it's so amazing. Like I just thought that was just so well done.
He goes and talks to some guy I assume is like her brother, and he's like,
Yeah.
"What? Oh, dude, not all Haitians know voodoo, man. No, Maury had sex problems."
Right. Maury wanted her to touch his penis. That's why she left.
Oh God.
And so there is no resolution there, but a super weird interaction with a naked zombie outside the door of that apartment. Just sort of you like it doesn't go exactly where you think it's going. You like at first when this whole storyline popped up, you thought that there might be some not magic, but some sort of thing that he could do to put Beth back into the grave or to stop what was going on, but that's not what happens. He, has to figure out how to rescue his family. He keeps telling them to go and pack stuff and he'll be back. And, he finally realizes that he's going to have to take care of Beth himself. Like this is what he needs to do to resolve everything. And the scene, I think, in her house where like she's just really totally, I mean, she is completely deteriorated to the point where she needs to be like duct taped to a stove.
And she has a chair leg through her chest, and she's
Yep.
eating her dad.
Yep. We don't see
There's
that,
a lot
but
of things that have gone badly.
yeah. But her mom is still like trying to feed her and be sweet, and it's just like this really, he's kind of like step away from the zombie.
This is the scene where Molly Shannon is kind of great.
Oh,
It's just
she's
because she's
amazing.
being like Mama Bird to a zombie. She's like, I feel like is she feeding her own hand? I don't know. Like she's
I
got a
think
bandage
she
on her hand.
is. I think
Yeah.
she is. And but the Zach character is being great about it and just like hold your hand above your head. Just a very normal thing. And it comes out that part of why they broke up is because he just didn't want to go hiking with her. He still feels guilty about that. And then they have this really crazy little hike scene. Um,
But she still has the oven strapped to her back. I have to wonder like what prop they had for that, or
I know.
was
It
Aubrey
looked
Plaza really just carrying an oven on her back for several hours of shooting?
It that looked no matter how light that was, that had to be rough, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Just in terms of the physical, I mean, that was impressive. And there's the other weird, resolution scene between Zach and his brother, where Zach basically is like, "Do what you have to do," and gives him his like gun. He's like, "I've always wanted to shoot people," and it's just like super weird.
That was my dream, was to shoot people. He's like, come up with a better dream, man.
Yeah, yeah. There's some really good writing and one-offs like that,
Yeah.
but the whole scene where Aubrey Plaza is like walking up with the radio on her, and she's just playing the song.
Hmm.
Also one of my husband's childhood favorites, sadly. He used to listen to this. His mom would like turn this up in the car, and like he would like want it over and over again. So
Oh boy. Wow.
yeah, I know, totally crazy. So this is like, while I was watching this, he was in the background like going, "Oh my gosh, I love that song." And I'm like, "Oh no!" And then the final scene, just so ridiculous. The final scene between Zach and Beth, where he's just like trying, it's like supposed to be this sweet departure scene, and she's just kind of gutturally like being like, "I love you," and when he shoots her and she goes over the edge and like legs are falling off.
I loved,
It's
even though it was super fake. I loved that.
no, it
That
was
was like
great.
a very, you know, conscious, tongue-in-cheek nod to the camera. Like, yeah, we're not going to throw Aubrey Plaza off a cliff.
No,
This
it's
is
a
a dummy.
dummy.
And then he throws the gun into the ravine, and then he has to answer to his brother later when he finds him. And he's like, "Where's my Desert Eagle? I thought I was going to get my Desert Eagle back." He's like, "I threw it away. I just shot my girlfriend in the head with it. I didn't want to carry it around."
Yeah, he's all mad
Little
about it.
things, little things. It just kept me chuckling. This movie it was just little jokes and little laughs that kept me really engaged and enjoying it.
Right, and then he does a final goodbye, and then they have her gravestone with the two dates of death on it, which was pretty funny.
Yeah, and all the graves of zombies are now like metal boxes. I thought it was a nice self-contained flick. I'm really bummed that it didn't get what I think was what it deserved as far as release goes. I think this movie got robbed.
I think it got robbed too. I also was a little surprised after I watched it. I read, I like to read through some reviews just to kind of see where people were, and I was actually very surprised at how poor it did in terms of the reviews. I feel like I agree with you. I think it was a self-contained, fun little film. Nothing like, as I said, it wasn't like an amazing film, but I just thought it was fun. And I think that that's a lot of what can be missing. And this is a genre, especially that you and I have talked about a lot. Like, what more could you do with it? And this was I think because of how narrow they kept the story,
Hmm.
I think that's part of why it was so successful. They didn't try to do like super crazy, silly stuff. They definitely, there was a tip of the hat to a lot of different zombie films in here, but it was just fun. And I thought that the cast was great.
They didn't,
And
as a la Warm Bodies, try to make the zombies the freaking protagonists.
right. No,
It's like I'm trying to come up with reasons why I hate Warm Bodies, but I like this movie, which is ostensibly a similar approach, which is lighthearted. It's not even a I mean, I guess it technically is a black comedy, but it's not nearly as depressing as Shaun of the Dead.
no, that's
It,
true.
it doesn't have any moments of total bleakness except maybe when he thinks his whole family is dead, but turns out they're not. Uh,
Right.
you know, so this movie just succeeds where a movie like Warm Blooded,
More
Warm Blooded, is
bodies.
that Warm Bodies? Thank you. To me, failed, but did way better commercially. I mean,
Yeah.
Warm Bodies was super successful. This movie, for all intents and purposes, has failed.
Yeah.
Maybe
And
it's gonna do better now that it's on demand. I don't know.
maybe, but I mean, the budget for this was I think a lot less than Warm Bodies, and clearly they didn't have the slick marketing that went along with this. This was just like a small little film that went to Sundance, and I think it's kind of sad. I thought that this was a lot more enjoyable for me to watch than other films that I have seen that have much larger budgets. And they played it pretty straight. It didn't, but yet it did have a few like sort of slapstick moments, but not over the top to the point where it was ridiculous. Yes, it was ridiculous, but not in the same way that sometimes I feel directors make decisions in zombie films and are like, oh, we can just do this because this is a ridiculous zombie film. They kept this, they had a very specific tone that they were going for, and they never exceeded that. They didn't,
Hmm.
there's definitely parts where you're laughing because of how silly it is, but not how ridiculous it is, if that makes
And
sense.
a lot of it is supported by the supporting cast, the people that we're, like the Paul Reiser moments, the John C. Riley moments, the Matthew Gray Gubler moments, which are peppered liberally. But honestly, it's propped up by the performance by Dane DeHaan and Aubrey Plaza. And Aubrey Plaza was a nice surprise. I mean, I'd never seen Dane in anything before, but Aubrey, I have like certain expectations that she's going to play her Parks and Rec character, which is kind of what I've seen her do most.
Hmm.
But I know now also that she has a lot more range thanks to Legion. Which have you been watching that at all?
I have not yet watched it though. I have seen clips of her in that, and I have heard really good things about it, so I do have to watch it.
It's a terrific way to watch Aubrey Plaza show what she can do as an actor, and she's a very impressive actor. Based on that show alone, I hope she gets like an Emmy.
Well,
But it,
I do know her character in that, and I think that the direction they took with that was really awesome. So, I don't want to give much away,
you're
but
familiar with the backstory of
yeah,
Legion?
yes, I
Okay,
am.
cool. I went into it knowing nothing, but yeah, very cool. So I was aware that she had this capacity, for going into Life After Beth, but I wasn't clear like when, how much of that we were going to get to see. And yet I feel like we got to see a lot of her acting way bigger than we got to see her do in Parks and Rec. Because I think that she was kind of constrained by the way that character was written on that show. Even though it was great and funny, and it was a great way to meet her as an actor, it didn't feel like she was doing as much as she could.
No, and that character is very one note, and that's part of why that character is so funny,
Yeah.
is that it is one note. But no, I hear you. So anyway, I have to say, I would recommend if you're looking for sort of a fun, lighter zombie flick, this is it, and have fun with it. And I agree with you. I hope that it does better now that it's been sort of released into the wild. It doesn't cost that much to rent it, and I, I'm now sad that I waited so long to watch it. Honestly, so
Well,
um,
yeah, I don't know that it was that. I don't know when it became available. It fell off our radar to be sure, but yeah, it is a shame that we didn't get to it sooner. And so I think we're giving it two desiccated thumbs up from Reanimated.
agreed, agreed. So what is going on next week, Stuart?
Holy free holies, H.A. Conrad. Next week, you are flying 20 hours to get to San Francisco Airport. Is that correct?
That's just about right.
Yeah, it's
So
going to
it's
feel
gonna
like 20
feel
hours,
like
Beth.
it.
And after that, you're going to get in a car and drive for another 20 hours into the forests of the north to find my hometown, well, my new hometown. And then,
Which is called Winterfell, I hear.
yes, Warden of the North, as I am. And then we're going to do a show in person. It's not going to be live. We're not crazy. It's not going to be streamed on the internet, but we will record a live episode for the first time ever. So we won't have to talk about, I'm on the West Coast, she's on the East Coast, and that
But
fluff.
they're cousins. No,
Who's her
I'm
cousins?
identical cousins. I was making a Patty Duke reference, which is going to go over the head of a lot of people.
And
Um,
including, sorry.
no, it's all good. It's all good. Yeah, but it's going to be fun. We'll be there in person. We'll be able to drink beers in person. It'll be fun.
Yeah. So join us then, and in honor of doing a show in person, we're gonna also break into season 5 of The Walking Dead. Is it 5?
It is
6?
season. Wait, were we on 5 or 6? Well,
I
one of
think it's
those.
6.
I think we're on 6.
So a season that we had a lot of criticism for,
Yeah.
but now that 7 has wrapped up, you know, we're catching up, man. It's taken us
A while. A
several
while.
years, but we're gonna catch soon enough. We'll be doing these as they happen.
Yep. And then, I think at some point we will do the iZombie thing, but not yet. So I feel like The Walking Dead is definitely in line with this kind of a visit, since this is one of the things we've bonded over the
Yes.
most. So
Yeah.
so
And
I'm
it's
excited
certainly
about it.
the most hours of Reanimated the podcast have been dedicated to The Walking Dead as opposed to anything else. So
True, true. I'm looking forward to doing that. But before we sign off, just if any of our listeners want to check out Life After Beth, you can download it on iTunes and Amazon, I believe. You
yeah,
can rent or buy it. Renting's probably okay for this one. And I would love to hear what people think about it, if they agree with us or if they pan it like the critics. And so to
yeah,
do that, drop us a line, reanimatedpodcast@gmail.com, or tweet at us, reanimatedpcast. Or if you want to leave a note on the website, it's reanimatedpodcast.com.
that's right. Oh, and another thing, I recently updated our website to include an archive, so you can now go and look at every single episode going back to the very first. For some reason our website did not have an archive until recently, so I just created a new page for that, and so now you can peruse everything we've done, all 134 once this one gets up there
Wow.
of our amazing episodes.
We're probably going to hit the 200, right?
I wouldn't jinx us. That's a long way away.
I know, I'm kidding. But anyway, yeah, that's Awesome. Thanks for doing that.
Yeah, yeah, of course. Always striving to make it better.
Yep. All right. Well, until next week in person, um, have a great week, everybody. Ciao.
Bye bye. Thanks for listening.